Just, just testing. Is my voice heard here?
Yeah, yep. Richard, we hear you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Okay, well, by my watch, it looks like it's 7:30. It looks like we have a quorum, so let's see if we can get started here. We have a pretty light agenda tonight. Welcome to the July Reston Planning and Zoning Committee. We did issue an agenda beforehand, and there are no applications for voting tonight, but there is an application that's Fairfax County wanted to give a presentation tonight. So that's the main thing on the agenda. Before we jump into that, it'd be good if we could get an approval of last meeting's minutes that were expertly done once again, I thought. So unless unless anybody has an objection to their approval, I would say that we would approve those.
Sorry, I move that we accept the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome. Do y'all do Robert's rules? I mean, do you need a second and all of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
I second it.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay, so I see a number of people that are on here. I know, Ali, I know you were the main correspondent from Fairfax County on this policy plan tonight. I don't know if you're the one giving the presentation or, but I will let Fairfax County introduce themselves and kind of explain, what this is all about. Everybody did get a draft of the policy plan that was sent to them in an email, just so you know that.
Okay, great. I'm Salem Bush. I'm joined here with Muhammad Ali. We're from Fairfax County. We're from the Department of Planning and Development, and we're here tonight to talk to you about the public facility element of the policy plan. So we have a plan amendment that's been going through. We came to you all, I think it was last fall, maybe at the very beginning of winter, and talked to you about kind of more comprehensively how the comprehensive plan works, how public facilities are reviewed and approved throughout the county, how the capital improvement program works with public facilities and funding, because all that has to do with this policy plan. So this public facility policy plan that you all should have access to, the draft text, that really is the way that we use really our policy through our comp plan to review new facilities that are coming into the county. We use that through a process we call the 2232 review process, as well as the capital improvement program, which is more of a funding and prioritization of projects. So I'm sure you all have seen some projects that have moved through this committee as for 2232 projects, so you might be aware of those. That's whenever we're reviewing this, we're using this policy plan as a reference to make sure that it aligns with the comprehensive plan's policies and goals. So with that, I put a link in the chat as well. That link will take you to the plan amendment website for this project. There you can actually find the draft text on there, but also other meetings that we're going to be having in the future, and it will give you updates on the project as we're moving along. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. I have a short presentation for you all. I don't want to take up too much time because last time we came, we talked more about kind of the background in this project. So I'm just here to give you a project update and see if you all have any questions or discussion about the plan text that we provided. All right, can everybody see my screen there?
Yes.
Good to go? Okay, great. All right, so just quickly, the agenda, talk about the board authorization, some coordination that we've done with agencies, planning commission, as well as community engagement throughout the process, developing the draft text, some next steps, and then some discussion and questions. So on July 14th, 2020, the Board of Supervisors actually authorized this plan amendment. And so this plan amendment has a couple of different items in it. One is the actual public facilities element of the policy plan, which is what we're focusing on tonight, as well as related updates to area plans. So last time I talked to you about how we have a couple different sections of the comprehensive plan. We have the policy plan side, and then we also have the area plan side. You guys are probably more familiar with area plans, and particularly in the Reston area when you have projects that are coming through. But also part of the authorization was to align that policy plan and the area plans to the capital improvement program. And as part of this project, this project really got started or initiated through a schools committee and schools board that was working with the planning commission, and they provided some recommendations to the actual public facility policy plan and some other recommendations throughout the comprehensive plan. And so that really initiated this process. So we have wrapped those recommendations into this update, as well as other more comprehensive recommendations that we worked on after that committee adjourned. So again, I just want to point out we have worked with quite a few agencies across the county. Most of them are county agencies. There are some that are actually outside agencies. These agencies both plan for new facilities throughout the county, so they may be part of the applicant process for new 2232 public facility reviews, or they're applicants for the actual capital improvement program. And then a lot of these agencies also are reviewers when projects are moving through the system. So they also are reviewing their own comprehensive plan policies to make sure that the projects align with the comprehensive plan goals. So I think we've met with at least over 40 agencies. We've had multiple meetings with them. We've come back to provide them the draft text to get recommendations for them as we move through the process. We've also met a lot with the Planning Commission, particularly the Land Use Process Review Committee. We've had 5 meetings over the last couple of years, as well as the last meeting we had, which was this past April, and we provided the draft text to them. And since that meeting, we made some revisions based on comments we received. And now we're moving through the community input phase, the second round of it. And so based on comments we received from the community, you all, also we're having meetings that are invited to all stakeholders and residents of the county. So we may revise the text based on comments we hear. And then we've also been giving an annual update to the Capital Improvement Program Committee that's part of the Planning Commission as well. Community engagement efforts thus far. Like I said, we came through you all last fall and winter, so we had some targeted supervisor district meetings. We had 3 countywide virtual meetings as well, and now we're in the second phase of public outreach, which should be concluded in August. And then just to give you an idea of sort of all the influences, all the big influences that we've really used to update this plan has really been. A lot of it was based on initially the countywide strategic plan and One Fairfax policy. The strategic plan was adopted by the board about 1.5 years ago. And so there was a lot of big vision goals that came from that we made sure we crosswalked with this plan update. We also got a lot of update from the agencies, the Planning Commission, and community as well. I'm going to give you a fairly high level overview of a lot of some of the major themes or some of the larger changes that you may see when reviewing the actual draft text. A big part of this, as I said before, we heavily rely on this text when we do the 2232 and capital improvement program review. So the idea was trying to make those, particularly the capital improvement program, we didn't have a lot of references in the actual policy plan about the capital improvement program. So we've strengthened that language. We've also tried to make things, more efficient for the review process, but also more thorough for the review process for both of those. Another major theme that we have too is co-location of facilities. So there's been a lot of talk about that across the county. It was definitely a focus in the strategic plan. But that, for those of you who are familiar with co-location is whenever we combine multiple agencies or multiple departments or services into like one building, one public facility building, or maybe it's multiple buildings on the same property. You're even two properties next to each other that contain public facilities. And so we've strengthened that language both to make co-location, we've given them just basically a little bit more guidance on how co-location should work, both to make things more efficient for the county in terms of resources, but also more efficient for county residents that are accessing the facilities, and as well as our agencies that are going to be housed in many of these facilities. Also, the last time this policy plan was adopted, it was really adopted in 1990. And there's been some minor changes over the years, but there's never been a comprehensive look at the entire document itself. So this is the first time we've done a complete revision and overhaul of it. And so since that time, a lot of things have changed in the county. There's certainly less available land. Land is more expensive. It's gotten more expensive to construct facilities. So we've tried to provide a more flexible approach to facility development, but also a more urban design approach to facility development, particularly in areas of the county that are denser, have more, mostly in the growth areas of the county. So trying to provide more flexibility for facilities to grow more vertically as opposed to just horizontally. And another theme that we've provided throughout this update is providing better access to residents. So thinking about the location where facilities should be located, particularly in growth areas of the county, but also providing better pedestrian bicycle access to residents, to the facilities and to the areas where people live. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, the countywide strategic plan and One Fairfax policy were a major influence and theme throughout the update as well. With that, I want to talk about next steps. So we're in the middle of the community engagement now. We're actually going to the board tomorrow to their land use policy committee to give them an update on this, where the plan's at. And then in August, we'll finalize the draft text after we hear back from Planning Commission, the board, the community, make some final adjustments to it. And then we plan on moving through the plan amendment public hearings this fall. And then there is another phase of this project. That phase is really going to be focused on updating the area plans. And so there's a bunch of different area plans throughout the county. Those go down to the district and sector level. And so there's a lot of references to public facilities throughout those plans. So it's really an inventory of our facilities, but there are some references in there about some of the larger needs for facilities and where they should be located in the county. So we're going to be updating that. Mo Ali is actually going to be heading that update. So we'll likely be coming back to you when we're working through that phase of the plan to get input on that as well. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or have any discussion that you all might have about the update and where we're at, or anything about the draft text.
Salem, thank you for that overview. I think just in general, just I guess, you know, we have various people on this committee, some who are probably pretty well versed on the policy plan and the comprehensive plan, but we also have some other new members too. I know I deal with it quite a bit, but is it a fair statement to say the policy plan is meant to be fairly general and fairly an overview that allows then the districts, as you said, to hone in a little bit more in the detail and then get into some specifics in other areas of the comp plan? You know, a quick example, maybe the stormwater management area, you know, it doesn't dive into exact quantities or different things of that nature, but some of that is carried forward when you get into some of the other text of the comprehensive plan. But the policy plan is kind of like an overarching set the stage type of document, I guess, the way I look at it. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a fair statement generally. The policy plan is more general, and so there's kind of like a chord that we try to strike where it has enough teeth that we can enforce some of the larger goals and strategies that we have at the county, but at the same time provide some flexibility so that we're not completely cornering ourselves and not allowing, you know, facilities to be developed. So it is definitely more general. The area plans do get more specific in particular details about facilities, but there's also a lot of other guidance in other parts of the comp plan. Like you might see some more guidance on, like, for example, you're talking about stormwater. You'll see that there's a whole nother chapter or element that's called the environmental element of the policy plan. And so you'll see a little bit more direction on some of the environmental like goals that we're trying to have at the county. And actually the environmental element is actually being updated. We're starting to update that one as well. And that's going to be going through a whole process over the next like year or two as well on that one. So yeah, it is more general. I think it's an accurate statement.
Okay, well, good. I have a couple questions here. Let's go to Lynn first and then Richard Kennedy.
Thank you so much, Rob. Appreciate it. And Salem, thank you. Great presentation. I do have two questions, just as it pertains to Reston. And you did make specific reference to Reston. So my question is, as you were developing this policy plan, where did the Reston planning principles and the design guidelines come into consideration as you're thinking about what you all are going to be doing, especially in Reston?
Well, this plan is a countywide plan, so it applies to the entire county. So, there's nothing that's specific about any one area of the county. It's overall guidance for the entire county. So, when looking at like Reston specifically, that's not something that we looked at trying to determine like how we would plan in Reston for, because this is an overarching document that applies to the countywide. So, that is tough to get exactly right, because we have a lot of different areas of the county that look very different, have very different terms of density, in terms of demographics, in terms of needs, facility needs. So, and that's another reason why, I think Rob was kind of mentioning this is more general in nature. So when we're not taking into account like the Reston's particular guidance on design guidelines or anything like that when we're updating this plan.
Oh, okay, because that was going to lead to my second question, and that was when you were talking about, planning for urban design and going more vertical. Reston does have very specific design guidelines, so I just want to make sure that those are being respected by the county. Thank you.
Yeah, those would be taken account, I think, probably through a different process. I mean, this 2232 review, it's or the CIP review, it's a little more general, but we don't get into the details of like a rezoning or like a special exception, which you guys probably see a lot of. That's when those design details come way more into effect. Now, we will generally approve things for like when we are looking at a facility, we'll generally know like what the building height is going to be, or the general square footage of a facility, or what the land uses are going to be when we're reviewing it for the CIP or the 2232, but not every little detail about like the design guidelines and things like that.
Thank you.
All right, Richard.
Yes, thank you. Let me go back to some of the basics here. One of the issues that our supervisor has raised generally, and Sam, you may have to educate me on this, how this is actually playing out. But the supervisor asked that we have some special considerations with respect to workforce housing. And as you know, I'm sure there is some specifics that have been changed at the Tyson's area, and also in some of the other areas. But where do we stand on that basic point about what will be expected for the Reston area? I know we're willing to cut down a certain amount of numbers, but as long as we get deeper subsidies in that. What can you tell me about that, please?
Well, I can't really tell you anything specific about that. I can tell you how it relates to public facilities and how we plan for public facilities. And I will say that some of the guidance that we have revised in this policy plan update has emphasized and I guess prioritized the potential for workforce affordable housing to be co-located with public facilities when it's appropriate and where it's appropriate and when it makes sense. So that is one way, because as you know, the county, one of the larger goals of the county is to provide more options for housing, more housing types. And so part of that is trying to think about how we can use our own resources of the county for land that we own as the county or the Board of Supervisors owns, and also facilities that we're developing where we have extra space or where we might be able to co-locate some of those things. So that is one way you'll see in this plan update that we're looking at housing. I'm not sure specifically how it's going to relate to Reston in particular.
Well, this has been going on for over a year, so I'm curious, when are we going to bring this to a head?
Yeah, are you referencing like the comprehensive plan amendment for the actual Reston study? Is that more what you're
No,
talking
I'm
about, or
trying to
no?
focus on workforce housing.
Okay.
There
Yeah.
are expectations throughout the rest of the county, but I thought our supervisor was working with you all on what would apply here in Reston.
I think they are. I haven't been involved in the Reston study. I haven't been involved in the workforce housing portion of it. But I imagine some of that has been flushed out in the Reston study to an extent, what those numbers would be. I know, the county adopted the workforce and affordable housing policy a couple of years ago, and it did have specific numbers for the county. I wasn't aware that Reston wasn't part of that, or Hunter Mill District wasn't part of that, or maybe those numbers are changing based on the Reston study. I'm not as familiar with that project just because I have not been involved in that portion of it.
What I think you're saying is this is not the document that is going to define it anyway. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yes.
We're going to
Yeah.
have to look for something else. And
Mhm.
I thought that was being taken into account as with the Reston plan, but
I'm sure it is being taken account for the Reston plan, but the project that I'm working on is totally separate from the Reston plan. It's just a
okay.
countywide document for how public facilities are approved and
Okay,
located throughout the county.
and I think that we can also assume from what you're saying that the way we move forward with the North Town Center area will be looked at based on the larger values and areas of commitment that you're um, talking about on otherwise in this program, correct?
I really don't know what the numbers are going to be for the It's North Town Center area. It's
Not,
not.
not talking about North.
Okay.
I'm not focusing on the numbers,
Uh-huh.
but I'm saying that I think what I hear you saying, and I want to make sure that I'm understanding this well, but that there's a lot of possibilities there in the North Town Center area, and the state, Reston is involved with the county on moving forward with that, and but that is just going to have the broad principles that you're talking about. There's nothing, you don't expect anything specific in this area. Is that correct?
No, nothing specific in this area. I mean, and it will depend on, like, with this update that I'm doing, it'll depend on when it's adopted for when it will actually apply to other projects that are moving through the county right now. So,
Okay.
my hope is that this plan amendment itself, the actual public facility element of the policy plan, would be adopted sometime at the end of this year. That's at least the schedule that we have at this time. Of course, that could change. So if it was adopted at the end of this year, if any of those projects were moving through, then these guidelines would apply to it as soon as these were adopted. That
Okay.
makes sense.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, looks like Katie has a question. Go ahead, Katie.
Hey, good evening. I'm trying to think what we're doing here. Okay, really quick, I have a question on page 20, objective 22 about the police stations. I'm just curious, how does that change from what the current objective is on like locating new police stations?
Let me pull it up. Objective 20, you said?
22 on page 20.
22, okay. And which letter is it?
Oh, no, just the objective to
the
locate police
objective.
stations is to provide. I was just curious, like, I only asked because I just finished the community police academy. And I know
Mhm.
I know they just opened one down in Lorton,
Yeah.
kind of over near South County High School, I guess that is.
Yes.
And I was just curious, so how does this objective kind of change to what if you even know, I was just curious.
Yeah. So that I don't think that objective itself changed. I'm looking at two different documents right now. I'm looking at the red line version and the clean version to try to see real quick. So let me find it real quick. Just a second.
Okay, and then as you're looking, I was just
Mhm.
curious, like, so who determines, or when you say you got like the objective is to locate these police stations, kind of like where the population, I guess, has the demand?
Mhm.
Is that something like you guys, is there some, like, I know you said you had a school committee. Is there a committee that sort of helps people, or helps like whatever the board of supervisors, whoever determines where the next police station is gonna be?
Yeah. So that's a good question. A lot of the way that that is determined largely is like when we're determining like where there'll be a need. Those determinations are largely brought on by the independent agencies. So like if the police department is trying to figure out where its services are needed more, it will then they have their own strategic kind of planning where they're trying to think about where to locate a new police station, where they might need one. And so usually at that point, once they figure out, they'll work with the Department of Public Works, Environmental Services at the county, and they have a whole design team. They have a whole procurement team that looks for available land or looks for available buildings. And so they'll kind of coordinate together to try to find the most appropriate place to locate one. And once they do that, then they'll start trying to get that project into the capital improvement program, which is the funding mechanism. And so at that point, that's when they've kind of determined where the need is. And then the CIP is of course reviewed by county staff, the county executive office, the Department of Management and Budget, as well as it then goes through the planning commission and then it goes through the board for approval. So it's a decision that's made by a whole bunch of people. It's not really just made by like one person, but it's really that need is really initiated by the individual agency or department.
Okay, is that the same for like schools, like where you're gonna locate new schools? Would that be the same? Or
It's
similar, I
yeah,
imagine?
so it's similar. So schools has, an entirely
Their
different
own budget.
arm. They have a school
Yeah,
board. And so
yep,
like
yep.
that school board, they have their own way of kind of figuring out their needs. And then of course, now their funding does come from Fairfax County. So they have their own CIP process, but then that CIP process is then brought to the Fairfax County and it is reviewed by the county and then adopted into the county budget. But yeah,
Okay.
they have their own staff and agencies that like try to figure out where they need
Yeah.
additions to schools. But all those school projects, they do come through us for review individually through the 2232 and
Yeah, that's
CIP
what I
program as
figured.
well. So
Okay.
I'm looking at that reference you made for objective 22, and the objective itself didn't really change. There was a couple of items in there that were added and a couple that were taken out. But that objective has stayed basically the same as it is.
Okay, good to
So
know.
some of the
Thank you.
policies have changed. Okay, you're welcome.
All right, any other questions from the committee? All right, hearing none, I think Salem and Mo, we can let you guys go. No, we appreciate your time and appreciate you working this late to give us that update and all the efforts that you're doing to kind of bring this to fruition.
Happy to do it, and I appreciate your all's time. And if anything comes up, if you guys have any questions as this goes along, visit the website. Feel free to reach out to us. You can provide comments there as well, but we're happy to talk more individually if anything comes up. Thanks again.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, good night.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
I know those guys do a lot of late night meetings, so we think we have it bad once a month. I think some of those county folks, they have a lot of meetings. Hey, so just two other things on the agenda tonight, somewhat brief, just kind of more updates if nothing else. But the third item on the agenda was this idea that there's what we call a comprehensive signage plan that's been submitted for what's being called the Russell at Reston Station. So that's the existing apartments that are along Sunrise Valley Drive over near Commerce, what I called Commerce Park and now being renamed as Reston Station, I guess on the south side of the toll road. So traditionally or historically, this committee hasn't really weighed in on comprehensive signage plans. I think if I recall, generally they've been kind of more viewed on the architectural side of the world. And so we haven't always really, that hasn't been a mandate for anybody doing a comprehensive signage plan to come to our committee for any type of approval. So this was sent to us just kind of a for information type of purpose. And so we kind of sent it out there to the committee just to just to be aware of it. And if there are any comments, the applicant did certainly agree to listen and to any comments that we would have. And for those of you who may not be familiar with comprehensive signage plans, so generally the Fairfax County zoning ordinance has a signage requirements and signage, I guess I'll call them minimums and maximums, if you would. So then if you have a development that starts to differ from what's in the zoning ordinance, and or if you have a larger development that starts to need a little bit more in the way of wayfinding signage and more directional signage throughout a given development, then typically the county starts asking for what they call a comprehensive signage plan. And so it's basically, it's almost like a report with some exhibits that basically tries to identify the signage, what it looks like, what it says, what's the size, what's the orientation, how it either relates or doesn't relate to the zoning ordinance requirements. And then that gets reviewed by zoning staff and eventually, gets approved by the county. So in this case, it sounds like they did somewhat of a comprehensive signage plan. What was interesting though, what I saw in the graphics, it seemed like a lot of that signage already exists. So, and maybe I overlooked one or two small features, but I know the big Russell sign is out there, and there's a vertical sign on one of the vertical elements of the apartments, and so but anyway, it's there for if anybody has any questions about it. But that's why we don't traditionally look at those. Anybody have? Yep, Mr. Carter.
On that, we don't regulate what it says on the sign. We don't have ability to do that. It's more about the size and the shape, and maybe whether it's flashing or neon or something, that the way it operates. But you can't regulate what it says on the sign.
Okay, that's a good distinction. I hope somebody's regulating that though somewhere. So if there aren't any questions about that application, or just that, really it's that information that was sent out to everybody, I could jump to the final item that was on the agenda, was this this kind of resubmission of the American Dream Way, what we all refer to as kind of like the Fannie Mae site, the old Fannie Mae site. So I think the applicant gave us a letter that was pretty self-explanatory, but this happens on occasion where an applicant gets an approval from the county, and there's some stipulations in that approval about meeting certain deadlines for certain things. And my understanding was that they missed a deadline, that there was some tax payment that was due by a date certain, and that date kind of came and went, and that nullified then the county approval. And that happens every once in a while. I've seen that on a maybe half a dozen instances over the years. But so in this particular case, what that meant is that applicant, in order to regain their county approval, they had to refile the plans, which meant they had to redate them and redate the proffers. And then the proffers had to be edited to address that payment issue, that the fact that it was then already paid. But my understanding, that's why they were using the term, it was, substantially in conformance with the prior approvals, because they did have to redate, so it did change a little bit, and they did have to edit the proffer slightly. But I I think we've seen some, well, I know some of you reached out to the county, and the county was pretty clear, the county staff, that they were making sure that nothing else was slipped in those plans between the last approval and now. And that is their job. I mean, that's what they're there for. So, and I trust that they'll do that very thoroughly. So we didn't see the need for, or I didn't see the need, I should say, for this to come back to our committee, since it didn't change anything that we had previously reviewed and approved. So it was more of a very administrative thing, and it's kind of being, you know, sent through the county process, I think, a little faster, given the kind of oversight or the technicality that they ran into that they had to correct. So any questions? Lynn, you have a question?
Yeah, Rob, thank you. I wanted to thank you personally for recommending that I do get in touch with Ben Wales directly regarding the new application or the re-application. I did go through many of my questions with Ben and got a lot of those resolved. But I did have a few things that were included in their statement of justification that I don't think that this was something that the McGuire Woods team was asserting. And I don't know if you want me to go through those with the committee, or if I should get back in touch. There were about 7 of them.
I mean, Lynn, you're welcome to share it with the committee, or
okay, I
again,
will
we're
be
not
brief,
acting
because
on it,
I
so-
know that we have a short agenda. I don't want to take everyone's time, so I will be expeditious in my review. But just in looking at the statement of justification on the very first page, you know, I didn't think that this property falls within the TSA. In fact, in looking at it, it does not geographically fall within the TSA, but they continue to claim that it is. So I do have an issue with that. In the executive summary, there's something about additional office space in the application. And it looks like they want to convert some of the additional Fannie Mae office space to some living options. So I just want to make sure that they understand that the remaining parcels are commercial. It's only one parcel that's being rezoned for residential. The other thing, the description of the concept plan, this is on page 3 of the statement of justification. There is an assertion that Fannie Mae is a park. It is not a park. They said that they would keep all of the ponds open, but might have to relocate some of the access. It looks like they're removing the gates on American Dream Way. Is that that's a new thing that's allowing residents to enter on Sunset Hills. And there's also that proffer 27A. Again, there was an assertion, I'm looking at page 4 of the statement of justification. You know, this is at the heart of the thing. They said that all trails would be accessible to the public. So it sounds like they're trying to say that some of those trails are going to be private. And then on page number 10, this is item number 5. We're wondering if they're widening the existing streets, and if they are, then what is that going to do to the tree canopy? And then finally on number 11, this is the modification of Article 13-300. This is for transitional screening and barriers. That and number 12, I believe that was only in response to a request by Ivy Oak. However, they're asserting that this is a modification based off of community input. So I think that one request from Ivy Oak does not interpret to community input. That's it. I was very expeditious. I hope you agree.
So Lynn, one
Yeah.
one thing I will ask, your assertion that it's not in the TSA. When I look at the TSA map, it's in the Wheelie Reston TSA area boundary.
If you look, no, it falls between Wheelie and Reston Station. It's not within. If you look at the actual site, it is outside both the Reston Station and the Wheelie. This is Fannie Mae, right across from Plaza America.
Yeah, I just Googled the map, so I'm staring at the map. So
I will email you my concentric circle that shows.
Is this material to anything? What you
Well,
know?
the thing that's material is that you can't, I mean, just by claiming that a property is within the TSA doesn't make it so. So I just think that
Well, I know,
it
but
is-
let's say that they
let's be
say,
accurate. That's all.
well, and I also you know, complaining that Charter Oak didn't get their props. I just find some of this just kind of nitpicky.
Charter Oak didn't get their props. What's that?
Well, because you said, well, the community gave feedback, yet
Oh, that's
it was
Ivy Oak.
just Ivy Oak, whatever. Sorry. I just, you know, it's my opinion.
And you're entitled to it, but so am I. Thank you.
all right, any other questions anybody else has? Any other things that anybody else wants to bring up tonight? That's the end of the formal agenda.
I'd like to mention that in a follow-up for the Brookfield Hallie Rise, the Fairfax County Food Council had a tour with the Up Top Acres group, which is the ones that are actually taking care of all the plantings. And they now actually have a website specifically for that area. And they are putting out a lot of public educational things, programs to participate in, private tours if someone has a group of special interest for it. And they have started the expansion of it, where they now have an area where they're setting aside planting beds for residents, and also an area that has some fruit trees and beehives. And still out for county approval is a small greenhouse that they're going to propose to be put on this additional expansion. So that's an interesting thing to see continuing on. And hopefully we can, I guess you would say, convince other developers to do the same. So just wanted to report that. They had that meeting this morning and I went there. It was really good.
All right, David or Sue?
Yes, just in response to Lynn's questions and comments. I appreciate that she's looked into the access of the public to the ponds and also to the trails, and showed concern about possibility of making some of those private, because my understanding was that those were to be open to the public. So I would want to make sure that that is followed up. The only other thing I have is sort of backtracking to the comprehensive signage. Just as a committee, I know that signage, you know, across the county can vary widely. And so I just would want a general indication from our committee that, you know, anything that is, you know, too large, you know, too colorful, et cetera, Reston is tree centered, and any signage should be reflect that. I know some commercial organizations have wanted, their own signage that they use nationwide or elsewhere in the county. And, we have always asked for signage that complements the principles and guidelines of Reston. So I would like to see that message conveyed to those who make decisions on comprehensive signage.
And again, the applicant that has asked if anybody wanted to give them feedback, they're happy to hear any feedback we have for them.
All right. Okay.
Well, if that's if there are any more topics or questions, we don't we can end the meeting here tonight. We do have I think we're going to have an agenda item for our August meeting. Sometimes we don't meet in August, but since we didn't meet in June, I believe Fairfax County Public Schools has a school, I think it's Armstrong Elementary Edition, that I believe they're finding out or discovering for some reason later in the process that they needed to come before us. I don't even know what's being proposed yet. I've only heard about it. I haven't seen anything on the application yet. So, but I have told them when our August meeting, and they've made an indication that they would like to potentially meet in August. So stay tuned on that one if they get back to me. All right, with that, do I hear a motion? Commissioner Carter, do you have anything to add before we adjourn? You're still muted, John.
There is another project out there that you won't see. It's the Hunt Club. It's actually outside the Reston boundaries, so the Hunter Mill P&Z committee will handle that. But for those interested in that, that's where it's going. It's going to the Planning Commission next week. So it's all the rage. It has a cemetery and this 1790 log cabin on it.
Yeah, they did approach us thinking that they were in the boundary of Reston, but then it was determined, no, they were just slightly outside.
That's right, but then.
All right. Other than that, it seems pretty quiet in the region right now in terms of applications. But maybe John's laughing. He sees it otherwise. But. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I have one last little item to mention, is that there was a very interesting article the other day, and it really related to Arlington County, where a number of office buildings that are sort of like not the latest design or useful, they can't compete with a more recent or newer office building, especially in today's market. They're actually starting to turn them into indoor farms. In other words, like hydroponic farming inside the building. Interesting. That was, I can't remember which day it was on, but it was in the Washington Post as an article about Arlington. Some Arlington office buildings have already begun this.
Fascinating. Wow.
That's likely a lot better use for those than turning them into housing.
Yes.
Because of the challenges that
exactly
has. So that's interesting.
Although there are a number of sort of like major firms, large firms, architectural firms that are doing very well about turning things into high-rise residential. There's a couple of buildings downtown in DC, and then around the country in general. There's kind of like a mixed problem with it. The ones that are being converted here seem to be doing fairly well.
We've certainly studied a lot of projects with developers, and I think it's just based on what the building is and what the sort of metrics and the floor to floor. So it's like they're viable projects, but it's like only 1 out of like 10 of them you look at really work. So what do we do
Right,
with the other
yeah.
9? Actually really like the idea of looking at some of these other uses. Urban farms seem to be a really, really interesting one. So that could be part of the answer to the question of what we do with all this extra space.
I agree with
Yeah.
you, Matt. That's great.
But interesting concepts that are people. I didn't get that, Lisa. What was?
It's called the silo.
Oh, the one of the buildings that's being converted is called the silo, not to be confused with the television program.
Rob, I would say there's one in Bailey's Crossroads that was recently approved. Interesting project, one of those high-rise buildings there. And there is one in Tyson's too, is 2 existing office buildings converting to residential. And in terms of those who are looking for things to do, the SSPAs will be coming in the fall to Reston, and there are 10 of those. And these are almost all conversions from office to something else.
Dave and I were visiting Toledo, Ohio, and we were walking downtown, and there was a huge building that had been converted into hydroponic. And so you could see the cilantro
Wow.
growing and the basil growing, and it was right next to a parking garage. So, but you could see through the glass, and
Love it.
it was very refreshing.
Well, I was
I'll
going
see
to
if
say,
I can't
if we-
find that article and send it around.
I'd like to read that.
I was going to say, if
I
they
would
don't
too.
convert it to plants, there's always pickleball. Everybody's into converting to pickleball these days.
Yeah, and in that particular
Green
sport is also
paddles
coming
for
around with the
pickleball.
highest injury rate of all sports in the country.
Yeah,
Right,
that's a
and
good-
there are green balls and green rackets for pickleball that make the sound much less
Obnoxious.
annoying, I was going to say.
Okay,
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I moved to
I'll
adjourn the
move.
meeting.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time tonight, and I'll let everybody know if we are meeting in August, which it sounds like we probably will.
Thank you.
okay,
Sounds
All right,
good, thank you.
Thank you.
everybody.
see you later.
Thank you, Rob.